I never heard of a crocodile crossing an ocean.
Well, they conceal information like that in books.
Welcome to A Cast with No Name. We are your hosts. I'm Jay.
And I'm Matt.
This is episode 18, Sunday, August 28th, 2022. This episode, we will be discussing the top 5 Man vs. Beast movies. And don't forget to visit our website, acastwithnoname.com, where you can comment on episodes and write to our email, contact.acastwithnoname@gmail.com. But first, it's been a bit. It's been a couple weeks, 2 or 3 weeks. I forget when, I don't know, time flies.
It's good to be back.
Yeah, welcome.
I feel like it's just podcast, interruption.
Yep.
Podcast, interruption.
It's the way the summer goes. It's all right.
Yeah.
How was your vacation?
It was great.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Vacation number 2.
Yep.
Within 2 weeks.
2 week span.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wish I had that life. I'm in the wrong industry.
Yeah. And you know what? My wife is going on another vacation today with your wife, so that's 3 for her in less than a month.
Yeah, it's
living her best life.
Hey, yeah, we get the kids this week. That'll be
it's gonna be great.
I don't have much hair to lose, but it's going to be gone.
Mine's lost, so it's okay.
So hey, we'll
join
match.
me.
We can rub our heads together.
Yeah.
But yeah, we had Puff fill in again for Uncharted, which was fine. We actually we recorded that remotely.
Ooh.
So he was actually not here, and we did it through Teams.
It felt like he was right there with you, Jay.
Didn't it?
Every step of the
I kept
way.
trying to grab his leg too, but every time I reached, it was just.
See, that's one thing you don't get. You don't get that intimacy with him.
I know. It is.
I'm sure he's.
It's just a vacuum of a space to where it felt like Monteteo's girlfriend to where I was.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. So it just wasn't there. But
it sounded great though.
Yeah, good.
So I'm glad technology comes through again in a clutch, in a pinch.
Helps us a little bit. So, but yeah, so that was our first remote recorded podcast.
Cool.
But yeah, what have you watched?
I watched a couple documentaries. Let's see. The Woodstock 99 thing, that was a 3-parter. That was pretty good. I would recommend that. If
Where's that on? Netflix?
Yeah, Netflix. If you're a kid of the 90s, yeah, definitely. I would recommend that. And then I watched Untold. It's a sports docu-series on Netflix as well. Netflix does pretty good documentary series. But the Untold one was the story of, at least the one I watched, was the newer one that came out about Manti Te'o and his whole catfishing escapade and all that craziness. I mean, it's a crazy story. I never really dived into it. I was just I knew about it and all the memes that came out and how he got, raked under the coals pretty much for pretty much his entire NFL career. And, could he lead a locker room with, after being so dumb and being catfished and all that stuff. And, you get he's a great guy, family guy, great friend, very, religious guy, down to his roots, hard worker, got catfished by one of the worst people I think I've ever seen put to film. Seriously. Yeah, I was talking to you about this, and they made it seem like the catfisher was the victim, and sure, going through some emotional issues and stuff that he, now transitioning to a woman, had to deal with. But, I mean, come on. Just, awful person. Yeah, Manti is one of the type of person you'd want to bring home to your daughter. Like, the whole time, I'm like, God, if I had a daughter, I'd call it Manti. You dating? You single, bud? Could you be my son?
Yeah, and I didn't watch the documentary. I was only aware of it through the memes as well, because that happened in the late 2000s or something.
Yeah, 2009ish.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
10ish, 11ish around.
So
there.
I never dove deep in it at all. But yeah, I mean, I can't imagine. I don't give a shit if the catfisher was going through emotional shit. It doesn't give you the right to.
Hell no.
At the expense of somebody else to make yourself feel better. It's just find another avenue.
Right. And you feel bad for him, too, because at the time, catfishing wasn't really a thing at that point. You had heard about it, but there wasn't a catfish series, and there wasn't that catfish documentary that came out, all that stuff. So he got really duped, and you feel for the guy. It was pretty elaborate.
Yeah. Is he married now?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think so.
Oh,
yeah.
good.
Yeah, he's got his life together now. He's
that's good.
Dealt with it. And he actually, at the end of it, forgave the catfisher.
Oh.
Yeah, hope you have a great life, and I forgive you.
Yeah. Then he steps away from the microphone and says, "Fucking
Yeah,
asshole."
you piece of shit. Yeah. So that's what I watched.
Cool. I watched a documentary series as well. It's on Disney Plus. It's called Light and Magic, and it's kind of gives you the history of the development of the special effects company Industrial Light and Magic, which I think I was scrolling through Reddit one day and I saw an ad pop up for it, and I was like, oh snap,
cool.
So watch that, because that was one of the profession when I was a kid. I wanted to be a doctor or a makeup effects artist. And
a doctor or a makeup effects artist.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
And so yeah, two totally different sides of the spectrum. And part of that is because when I saw T2 for the first time, and I saw some behind the scenes featurettes to where they were playing the makeup on Arnold Schwarzenegger when his T-800 skull was kind of half showing through his face, and you had Stan Winston doing all the makeup
right
stuff for him, and that movie, like that, plus the T-1000 going through the grate and the mental institution, all that stuff, to where I got really into computer effects and really into the makeup effects.
Right.
And of course, I remember my grandmother, she's like, "Oh, you want to be a makeup artist?" And thinking that I wanted to make people look pretty.
Right.
That's the way I was like, no, T2. And I showed her a clip, and she's like, "Ow."
Yeah, it's kind of like, when I was growing up, I really wanted to be a hairdresser or a neurosurgeon.
Yeah. But it was a pretty good documentary. It was directed by Lawrence Kasdan, and
he directed the documentary.
Yeah, and they have recent interviews of everyone that's still around that was part of the original team, like John Dykstra and George Lucas and everything else. They had Ed Catmull, who went on to be CEO, president of Pixar, because Pixar actually spawned from Industrial Light and Magic. It was their computer division. And they separated out the computer animation department and sold it to Steve Jobs, and that's what became Pixar.
Gotcha. I was going to say, who still owns a stake in, does Steven Spielberg own anything, any shares in?
So he had, they had DreamWorks.
Okay.
So it was him, David Geffen, and one other person. They started DreamWorks.
SKG.
Yeah, SKG.
Katzenberg? Does that sound right?
Maybe.
Jeffrey Katzenberg?
Sounds correct. We'll go with Jeffrey Katzenberg.
There you go, yeah.
They started DreamWorks, and then they had the offshoot of DreamWorks Animation for that one. But Spielberg, I don't think, was involved at all in Pixar. It was mainly Ed Catmull, John Lasseter, and Steve Jobs.
Right.
And then Steve Jobs sold it back to Disney, I think, in the late 2000s.
Gotcha. It's always interesting when you watch Toy Story and you see Steve Jobs as a credit.
Yeah, as a
Really?
producer. Like, what the fuck was he doing?
Yeah.
And he was the money man.
He threw the money at it. Give him an executive producer credit.
Yeah.
That's what you do.
But it was a pretty good documentary. A lot of what Disney comes out with, as far as documentaries, they're puff pieces. And like, oh, we always had so-and-so in mind for this role. I'm like, no, you didn't.
Yeah.
Like, oh, it's such a collaborative team. And like, no, it wasn't. And,
Right.
But this one actually kind of focused. John Dykstra kind of got the shaft a little bit, because I don't think John Dykstra created a motion control camera setup that was used for the original Star Wars. And that was the first project they did. And during the production of that movie, him and George Lucas got into it quite a bit. And then after Star Wars, and while they were doing pre-production for Empire, the documentary kind of goes into where George Lucas was kind of picking people, saying, hey, move up to San Francisco. Let's go up to San Francisco. And he was kind of hand selecting people, and left John Dykstra, who was the head of special effects for his company and for Industrial Light and Magic and for Star Wars, was kind of given the shaft. But it kind of goes in there a little bit, and they don't rose tint everything. It kind of talks about some of the difficulties that they had, which I appreciate. Just
Right.
because if everything's so roses and whatever, just rainbows and
rose
shit.
tinted glasses.
Yeah.
Is it just one episode, or is it a series?
6 episodes.
Oh damn.
So
Like an hour long each.
Yeah, 40 minutes to an hour.
Oh, okay.
And but it's great because each episode focuses on a certain portion of the era.
Oh, cool.
So the first one was mainly Star Wars and developing the company and kind of the difficulties, and it's only has to do with the special effects department.
Oh.
And then the next one kind of goes into the stuff they did for Raiders and Young Sherlock Holmes and all these other movies. It just kind of goes through.
Was it Young Sherlock Holmes, the first movie with, what was it called?
A fully animated
Yeah.
CG character.
Yes.
Yes, it
The
was.
pane glass
And that's
night
when
or whatever.
Pixar was still with, that was the Pixar division of Industrial Light and Magic.
Huh.
And once they had that technology, Pixar was separated to where it was more animation based, to where, I mean, it's all animation, but then Industrial Light and Magic took the technology that Pixar had developed and kind of geared it more towards compositing, which is taking computer animation and putting it into live action film, as opposed to just strictly having the whole environment computer animated.
Gotcha.
So,
I always love Young Sherlock Holmes.
I've never seen it.
Love it.
Yeah.
It's great. Yeah. It's one of those underdog or under the radar movies when I was a kid growing up, like Willow. Not a lot of people have seen that, and Young Sherlock Holmes is definitely one of those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah,
You'll have to check it out.
Yeah,
Sounds great.
It's interesting. It was it's fun. It's a fun watch.
Cool.
Just because they kind of go into a lot of how they created the different effects. And
Right.
for me, it was more interesting for the practical effects that they did and how they got some of the shots that they did, which I was kind of sort of aware of. But there's a couple, even if you're listening to this and you're like very much into special effects, I'm sure there's one or two nuggets of things that
You wouldn't have
learn.
realized.
Yeah, you wouldn't have realized, or it just gives you a different kind of perspective as far as how they went about it, especially with the technology that they had at that time.
Cool.
So, but yeah, very entertaining. So,
Yeah, I'll check it out.
yeah.
I love nerding out with that stuff.
So,
Cool.
top 5
Yeah.
Man versus Beast movies. You wanted to do this top 5.
Yes, because of Beast.
Yes, because Beast came out 2 weeks ago with a thunderous plop, and
I know. No one saw it.
Which let's talk about that trailer a little bit, because that's the reason why I'm not a fan of these kinds of movies. And while making these lists, we had some stipulations.
Yes.
We had it can't be man-made.
Yep.
So because we didn't want to talk about Jurassic Park.
Yes.
We didn't want to talk about, and they're not monster movies, so that kind of pushed King Kong and Godzilla and those types of movies, and we didn't want to talk about aliens.
Yes.
So we wanted to kind of focus it on natural occurring, or mostly natural occurring things.
Right. Which kind of dwindles the list down a little bit.
It does, and
Yeah,
it makes it because I had a hard time coming up with 5.
Yeah.
Just because, one, I don't have a long history with these types of movies, and because they seem kind of just over the top and dumb, especially when they take themselves seriously.
Sure. Yeah.
And, but like, so for The Beast, when I saw the trailer, I saw Sharlto Copley was in it and Idris Elba. I was like, well, that's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like, oh, kind of like a survival kind of a movie. And then one of the last shots, it had Idris Elba punching a lion
In the face.
In the face. And at that point, I was like, oh, I'm not going to watch this ever. And because I'm one of those people that judge a book by its cover. And I was like, that's part of the movie. Is him manhandling a lion.
Right.
No.
Well, normally you're not supposed to do that, Jay. Judge a book by its cover, but you don't live your life that way, do you?
I don't.
You're
I'm
against the grain.
Superficial, like everything surface level. That's my go-to.
Yeah, I don't mind movies like that if it's entertaining. Which one of those movies is on my list. But you're right. If you take it too seriously, it kind of takes you out of it. Mm-hmm. If you're gonna be absurd, then just kind of
you got to go with the absurd.
Yeah, go all in. And yeah, I don't get that sense that Beast went all in on the absurdity. It's probably takes itself seriously.
Yeah, and
sure.
With that kind of movie, if you do take yourself seriously, you can't have over the top things that kind of leap past common sense.
Right.
Or in the realm of possibility.
Right. And I could be wrong. Maybe there's set pieces in that movie that are suspenseful. And, I mean, Idris Elba's awesome. Mm-hmm. I like him in pretty much everything he does. Love Sharlto Copley. I even like Ballastar, whatever his last name is, who's directed it. He did Contraband and Everest. I like both those movies.
Yeah.
Those are both good. I don't know. But, yeah, I probably won't go see it in the theaters. I'll probably wait.
Okay.
until it's free on Amazon.
Yeah.
Quote unquote free.
I probably won't watch it ever.
Oh, well, there you go.
Well, if you watch it and you're like, it's worth watching, maybe I'll check it out. But,
okay.
But yeah, there's, I think all the movies on my list, at least, they could have, if they had a punching the animal scene.
It didn't make the list?
It didn't, just didn't make the list because, I mean, unless, it plain didn't make the list because most of the time if they had like The Gray, I think it ends up on a lot of these people's lists as far as like best man versus beast, which I thought was a great movie up until he did the Rambo, wrapped his hands and put shards of glass or some bullshit in his
he's gonna
fist.
he's gonna Irish drunk and box him to death.
A pack of wolves, and I'm like, no. Great movie up until that point because you just jump the shark in that situation. Yeah, and it's
Liam Neeson. That's what he can do.
He can do.
That's
anything.
what he does on the weekends.
He can punch wolves. He can climb over a fence in 47 cuts.
That's right.
He can do it all.
He can do anything.
But yeah. So let's get into it.
Let's get into it. Hey, we're gonna try something different this podcast too, right? We're gonna amp up our game.
Yeah, we actually have some audio clips, so we're gonna be playing those that way when we reference something. If you guys haven't seen it, or if you have seen it but you're questioning what the hell we're talking about, we have some audio clips. So that way, hopefully, you can follow along with us.
Right, and rather than have Jay or I act out or quote a movie, it's better if we can give you guys the actual actor giving the quote.
It's a lot
there is an actor in these clips that is just flawless at delivering lines, so I'd rather have them do it.
So. All right. Do you want to go first with your number
sure,
5?
I'll go first. Okay. I'll go first. So I had a really tough time trying to, like you making this list. The number 5 in particular, I was struggling between the Shallows and Ghost in the Darkness.
Okay.
What I want to put on there. I ended up putting the Ghost in the Darkness on there because I have some nostalgia with it, and I kind of grew up with it. But anyway, for those who haven't seen it, Ghost in the Darkness, it's about Val Kilmer plays an Irish engineer tasked with building a bridge in northern Africa, Kenya, I believe, in a region called Savo. And that's it. And then as they're building the bridge, the construction workers and the whole team gets attacked by 2 lions.
Okay.
And that's the story.
Nice.
And I think why I like it so much is it's based on a true story. Mm-hmm. And actually, the 2 lions that are supposedly attacked, not supposedly they did, they ate like over 100 people, killed over 100 people.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. You can actually go to the Chicago Natural Field History Museum.
Yeah.
There's a display of them.
Oh.
Because
I love that museum.
The character that Val Kilmer plays, I can't remember, Colonel something, Stephen something. He actually, after they killed the 2 lions, he like skinned them, and he had the 2 lions as rugs, like where he lived at his house. And then when he decided he didn't need them anymore, he sold them to the Chicago Natural History Museum for $5,000. And then they kind of recreated the lions off the hides.
So they wrapped the rugs around them.
Yeah. So when you go there, I remember when I went there in 98 or 99, and I'm like, ooh, I'm gonna go see the 2 lions from the Ghost in the Darkness. You get there, and it's like, really? These are the 2
They were cubs. They were just kittens.
You would think that they were going to be like 30 feet tall and just gigantic, and in the movie they have manes, but they're maneless lions in reality. Oh, yeah. But they gave them manes in the movie to make it more menacing.
Sure.
But anyway, that's the whole movie. Stephen Hopkins directed it. I like Stephen Hopkins, his early stuff, particularly Judgment Night, which is one of the most underrated movies that have ever been made. Have you ever seen Judgment Night?
I have not. I haven't seen Judgment Night, and I haven't seen The Hard Darkness.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Judgment Night's great. It's got Emilio Estevez and Cuba Gooding Jr. and Jeremy Piven and Dennis Leary. It's really good.
Nice.
It's a small movie. It's fantastic. But anyway, I like him. Val Kilmer, of course, I love. The man is just a treasure. And I like Michael Douglas a lot, too. So they kind of carry the movie throughout. But the reason I like it, again, it's a real-life story. The scenes in it are very well done. There's not a lot of CGI. I think there's one CGI shot, and the rest of it is like they had real lions.
Yeah.
There's one animatronic part in it that you barely notice, but the rest of it, like the two real lions that they're wrangling and having in the scenes. So it gives it some realism to it.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's cool.
I'm going to try to play a clip here.
Oh.
I'm putting it on. We're going to test this out.
Put it on.
This is the scene where, so Val Kilmer is tasked with killing the lion. When he first gets there, he kills one lion, and they assume that all is good. But turns out that's not the lion that's doing all the killing, right?
Okay.
So more death is happening. He can't kill the lions. What's going to happen? They contracted Michael Douglas's character, Remington, nod to the gun, to help him out, aid the lion. And this is the first scene of the workers revolting like you're never going to kill the lion, and then Michael Douglas comes in to introduce himself.
Okay.
We are sick and tired of your lies. You listen while I talk.
Changing plans. Get him back! Now get him all back! Get him back!
Go back quickly! Go back! Go back! Go back! Go back!
You listen while I talk, because you got a question needs answering. Will I pull this trigger?
You don't know all that has happened here.
He will pull the trigger, Abdullah.
The devil has come to Sabo.
Oh, you're right. The devil has come to Savo. Look at me. I am the devil.
Oh, yeah, he is. Anyway.
It's had some Dirty Harry vibes to it.
It does. It definitely does. But funny thing about the background of this production, like Stephen Hopkins and Michael Douglas did not get along at all. Actually, he wanted Anthony Hopkins to play Michael Douglas's character, but Michael Douglas was the producer on it, and he what's the word I'm looking for here? Not overwrought. Anyway, he overruled him. That's what I'm looking for. Overruled Stephen Hopkins, and he kind of just forced his way into the role. So, and Val Kilmer came on to this movie after his like awful experience on the island of Dr. Moreau. He's going through a divorce, so Stephen Hopkins has a lot of good interviews with Val Kilmer, like how impressed he was with his performance because of all the shit that was going on in his life. And it definitely comes through. He's really good in it. But yeah, just all that tension on the set, and there's a lot of recuts in it and all that stuff. The fact that this came out of all of that is pretty impressive. Because overall, it's a pretty solid movie. It's by no means a masterpiece, but I enjoy it. I like watching it over again. I don't dread watching it, but it's enough to make the list.
Got you.
I would recommend it.
Okay.
If you're bored on a Sunday or whatever day.
Nice. The my number 5 is actually Shallows.
Oh, there you go.
So there you go. So we can talk about that one too.
Sure, why not?
But excuse me. The Shallows came out in was it 2016 and stars pretty much Blake Lively. And it's about a med student who goes out surfing at a cove that her mother used to vacation at, and her mother had died. She's kind of going out there kind of in remembrance of her, and she's surfing, and a shark comes along, bites her, and she's left stranded on a rock.
That's right.
200 yards from shore.
Right.
It's a very small movie. I mean, most of it just takes place in that cove, and it's kind of like a survival type of movie to where she uses resources that are aware to her. I mean, she's a med student, so she kind of knows what to do to keep herself going. It has that survival aspect of these kinds of stories that I really enjoy. There's not a shot of her punching a shark in the face.
Yep.
So that's automatically a win. But her acting in it is phenomenal.
Yeah.
And
yeah, she's really good in it.
Yeah, and it's engaging. I mean, it's not that long of a movie. It's like an hour and a half, and which it doesn't need to be. So like those kinds of movies are just simple place, single setting stories, and it takes smartphones out of the equation because she left her phone on the beach, and so it makes everything kind of believable.
Right.
And
doesn't she have a camera in it though, or what is she? She's doing something to communicate something.
There is a there's like a GoPro camera that she has. Right. So So they have that aspect, but she has no way to transmit
Right.
stuff.
But she can record something.
Correct. Yeah. And
That's what gives it that emotional heft.
Mhm.
Because if it was her just on a rock with no way of interacting outside of where she is, and
Yeah.
it'd be tough to.
Yep, but I mean it's a good small little movie, and
Yeah.
and the reason if I like a man versus beast movie, it's typically because it shows the resiliency of humans, and I think that's the overall theme you need to have with these kinds of movies, because that's not. It's not that we're physically stronger
Yeah.
than these animals, because we're not. It's our ingenuity and our minds that are able for us to overcome these obstacles.
Wait, not punching the shark in the face?
Correct.
Right,
So,
Just like running 200 yards on top of sharks?
yeah,
Spacewalking?
hopping through like Roger Moore.
Yeah,
and,
like Uncharted and Tom Holland, 20,000 20,000 feet in
yeah,
the air.
being able to jump from crate to crate.
Yeah.
With
250
mile an hour wind. Yeah, God, he did not skip a leg day.
Yeah. I think the Newton's third law of equal and opposite reaction just doesn't apply.
Yeah, well, it doesn't, because aerodynamics does not matter when you're in the air with all this wind blowing at
Yeah.
you. So, but no, I mean, pretty good movie. I mean, it's an interesting watch. The acting's great. The movie's put together very well because it's entertaining. It doesn't feel like it drags anywhere. They keep it short enough, keep things moving.
Yeah.
And it's somewhat believable.
Right.
So.
Yeah, it almost made my list. It's probably a better movie than The Ghost in the Darkness, but again, nostalgia factor.
Yeah.
I like that. Real animals were used to make the movie.
Yeah, these are top 5 favorite ones, not top 5 best
Right.
things ever made.
Yeah.
So. But yeah, Shallows, number 5 for me.
Like it. All right, my number 4 is I think this is like your number 3 or 2, but Lake Placid.
Okay. Lake Placid is my number 2.
There we go.
Yes.
Okay, let's talk about it.
Absolutely. Go ahead with.
Yeah. So if you haven't seen Lake Placid, it's essentially a movie about a giant alligator in, I think, Maine. Is it Maine?
Yeah, it's Maine.
Maine. Okay. And that's it. So it's a giant alligator movie in a lake in Maine, obviously Lake Placid, and Bridget Fonda is called in to investigate it. Bill Pullman's the local sheriff.
He's the fish and game.
Okay, fish and game guy.
Yep.
And then Brendan Gleeson is the sheriff.
The sheriff. Yep.
Right. And then you got Oliver Platt, who's a
Kind of a
world-renowned like alligator hunter.
yeah,
Not a hunter, but
billionaire,
an eccentric.
playboy, eccentric, rich guy who loves alligators.
Right. You got Betty White in there, and that's the movie. I mean, all it is just these characters interacting with each other, trying to find the giant alligator.
Yeah. So you have this at number 4. I have it at number 2. The reason, and this movie is absurd.
Right. In all the best ways.
Yes, and that's why it's high up there, because I think if you're going, this is a kind of movie to where if somebody punched an alligator in the face, it would be somewhat believable. Now, wouldn't it be,
Right.
oh, I punched him and knocked him out? Obviously, that's not believable.
Sure.
Wouldn't fit in this movie. But if they had a scene like that to where someone was going to try and box an
Yeah.
alligator, maybe it would fit. But the absurdity of this movie, the characters play into that too, to where I like this movie not because the alligator, like everything with the alligator is my least favorite.
Yes.
It's these characters interacting with each other is why it ranks so high on my list.
Absolutely.
Because it's incredibly funny,
Yes.
and every single actor knows what kind of movie they're in.
Yes. Yeah.
And they kind of understand the absurdity of it, and I
Yeah.
think that's what plays so well with it.
Yeah.
And one of my favorite bits throughout this movie is just them shitting on
each
Brendan
other.
Gleeson's
Yeah.
character. Yeah. So they gang up on him,
Yeah.
the local sheriff, and they kind of gang up on Bridget Fonda because
Yeah.
she's from
City
New
girl.
York,
Yeah.
and city girl just out in the
Out of her
wilderness.
element. Yeah.
And Bill Pullman plays more or less a straight man.
Typical Bill Pullman
yeah.
straight man character.
Yep.
That's his bread and butter.
And he's just kind of there as like, I feel like as the audience, you're supposed to relate to that character.
You're supposed to be Bill Pullman. Yeah.
Yeah. And but then Oliver Platt is probably one of my favorite movies he's been in.
Oh yeah,
and,
for sure.
Why he wasn't in more after this, just blowing up as a comedic actor, is beyond me.
Yeah.
But I think this movie kind of got lost because of the year it came out in.
Yeah.
Which was 99, which
99.
is like, I mean, to release a pretty good comedy in 99 sucks because you had with The Matrix, you had all these
Star Wars.
Yeah, all these massive movies coming
Yeah.
out that year. It was like 1982 and
Yeah.
2008. You had just so many good movies came out this year. I feel like this kind of got lost.
Right. And it was the beginning of the advent of you had to have a CGI character in something.
Mm-hmm.
So just the market was saturated with movies like that, with CGI characters and bigger budget movies like that.
Yeah, which they still had some practical effects in
Yeah.
there. They had which worked.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Well, and also I think this relates to another movie on my list, which is on your list too. It's hard to market horror comedies. It really is. Because that's one thing that surprised when I first saw this. When I was watching it, I thought I was just going to watch a horror like monster alligator movie, and it shocked me about how funny it was.
Mm-hmm.
Like I laughed more than I wasn't scared at all. I laughed the whole time. And the reason I watch it again is not like you said for the horror element. It's because it's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great comedy, great dialogue. But yeah, the shitting on the sheriff is great. I have some clips for it, but I mean, every character just kind of craps on the sheriff and just kind of insinuates throughout the entire movie that that he's dumb.
Yep.
Why don't you play the play the first? This just kind of like throughout the movie, Brendan Gleeson's character and Oliver Platt's character, they kind of going back and forth because they're two totally different sides of a spectrum as far as characters and also where they came from.
I never heard of a crocodile crossing an ocean.
Well, they conceal information like that in books.
So short, super short clip.
Yeah.
But I mean, you get it to where he has a bunch of this just offhand comments to the sheriff, and
in his face you can see that he's tired of it.
Yeah, and Brendan Gleeson's facial reactions is just throughout the entire movie. Whenever someone talks to him, you could just see the not desperation, but just the
you fucking ass.
Yeah,
can you just can you just let me breathe for 5 seconds? Yeah.
And then go ahead and
you want to go through all the Betty White stuff?
Yeah, just go.
By the way, Betty White is amazing in this.
Yeah,
she's fantastic. She's probably the best part in it.
But this kind of piles on just all these characters.
Yeah.
My husband passed away. It's been almost 2 years now.
My department doesn't have any record of that, Mrs. Bickerman.
Well, I'm sorry. Incomplete records haunt me so.
What was the cause of your husband's death, ma'am? Do you know?
So, no matter what he says,
I know
it's just doesn't matter who the character is, they just continue
keep shitting on it. He gets shit on by like an 80-year-old nice lady. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he can't escape anything.
Yeah.
Well, finally, I just gave in. And I hit him on the head with a skillet, and then buried him under the bulkhead. Well, dig him up if you don't believe me, Sherlock.
Which you can't see it, but
his face.
I buried him under the bulkhead, and there's a shot of Brendan Gleeson. It's like, oh, come on, and
right.
That's what drives her to say that. But and then the last clip from
we'll do this last one.
Your husband burned. You didn't by any chance lead him to the lake blindfolded?
If I had a dick, this is where I'd tell you to suck it.
You're under full house arrest.
Thank you, Officer Fuckmeat.
Sheriff, we got a problem with Hector.
You can't take a cow by eminent domain.
We just did. We won't let her get hurt, ma'am.
You're all cocksuckers. I knew it first. I just didn't want to say it.
We know what we're...
But
awesome.
Yeah, I mean the way they treat that sheriff character, just because typically they have more respect for him, and like if it was a more serious movie, they wouldn't shit on him so much. But it's definitely more of a comedy than anything else.
Absolutely,
but and that's the reason why it's my number 2, because I think it does the absurdity of these kinds of movies. It's probably one of the best examples of an absurd man versus beast movies.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't take itself too seriously.
Not at all.
I mean, it's more about the comedy than anything.
Yeah, Yeah, but they do have when they sprinkle in the horror. I love monster movies like this one. I like the build up to it of what are we dealing with, like the etymology of it all. Like some people don't believe what you're talking about, and you as an audience are going on this journey of them trying to figure out what they're dealing with. This even does a pretty good job at that because Brendan Gleeson doesn't. The first part of the movie is like, this is just it's not an alligator. It's probably something else. And the scene where the alligator jumps up and eats the bear for the most part, and Brendan Gleeson realizes that, oh shit, we're dealing with like that's done pretty well.
But yeah, and it does pretty well. Like Oliver Platt swimming with the alligator.
Yeah,
that scene is fairly well done because you don't know. I mean, characters just up and die quickly to where, granted, a lot of them are minor, but it comes out of nowhere. So. It does a good job establishing that tension for some of those scenes that require that. So it does a great job of handling the tone because mainly it is a comedy, but there are some scenes in there to where there is some kind of suspense.
Right. And David E. Kelly wrote the script.
Yeah. Was that Law and Order?
LA, dude, he's like prolific. Yeah. Ally McBeal, Boston Legal, The Practice, LA Law. I mean, it's nuts. He's won like 11 Emmys, and it's just weird. He's like, I want to write an alligator monster movie. Maybe that's why I was lightning in a bottle.
Yeah, I'd be interested. I don't know if he just kind of wrote it out of the blue.
Maybe
like he was just kind of, maybe he was hired out of.
Yeah.
Hey, I want some extra work. We're like, can you write this?
Yeah, maybe that was it. Maybe there's a script, and they're like, hey, David, could you punch this up? I mean, I don't know. But yeah, because the director Steve Miner, he did like Friday the 13th Part 2 and 3. Did House, Halloween H2O. Remember the movie Soul Man with C. Thomas Howell?
Oh, jeez.
He did that movie. So yeah, obviously you're not working with like Spielberg here, but it's the script that carries it for the most part. Yeah. And I don't know, how do you think they convinced Betty White to do this? Because I think before this movie, I don't think she had done anything.
Oh, she'd always done comedy.
I know comedy, but not
anything that crass.
That crass, yes.
Oh, I mean. She was later in her career, obviously. I mean, but she went on like for the next 20 years. She was still doing stuff. Yeah. So, but I think she's always probably just the opportunity of playing a role that she's never really played before.
Yeah. She nails it.
Yeah,
it's great.
You could tell she's having fun with it.
Oh yeah.
Her comedic timing, like was it Cloris Leachman? I think is probably the only other person that I think would be able to pull off that sweet old lady.
Yeah, probably.
That's also crass. But,
yeah.
And I think part of it. Being one of the first roles for Betty White like that, to where it gave a lot of people a different perspective as far as what she could do.
Right, kind of introducing her to a younger crowd.
Yeah.
Like, oh, she's pretty funny. Yeah. It's great. I love it.
So, cool. But yeah, that's my...
that's my number 4.
That's your number 4. My number 2.
What's your number 3?
My number 4.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's right.
Yeah.
You go ahead.
We count. We start from 5, 4... No.
Hurts my brain.
My number 4 is Tremors.
Oh.
So that is now Tremors. I feel like still counts for this natural occurring thing because I think in Part 2 they explain it as like a prehistoric thing.
Yeah, right.
And,
it's like a dinosaur.
But actually, I think there was some kind of. I googled it because I wanted to see if there was anything kind of similar in like prehistoric era that actually, and there were some kind of worms that were larger in size at some point in history or whatever, some kind of fossilized whatever. But anyway, so they're naturally occurring within the movie. They're prehistoric and they just kind of wake up.
Yeah.
But Tremors is another example of kind of like an absurd movie, but they're having fun with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it doesn't take itself too seriously, but it does a good enough job of also maintaining that suspense and kind of having the ability to switch tones.
Yes, on a dime.
Yes.
Yeah. Tremors is actually my number 3.
Okay. Well, good.
Look at us. We're just simpatico.
We're just flowing through this
But like
list.
you said, there's not that many that fit this list. But it's good because I mean, Tremors is a good movie. It really is.
Yeah,
it's well done.
And I think part of it, I think it was meant to be like a scary. I mean, it has some comedic elements into it. I know Kevin Bacon was not a fan of being a part of this. He thought his career shit the bed.
Yeah.
And there's a story that like he cried.
Yeah.
Out on the street after like
he had a baby on the way. Mm-hmm. He had like 4 movies in a row that just completely flopped, and he essentially took the role because he needed money.
Yeah.
That's why.
But he still gave.
It doesn't come through in this performance.
It doesn't. Yeah. I mean, everyone does a great job with what they have to do. Fred Ward,
awesome.
Kevin Bacon, Reba is in this.
Yeah.
And
Michael Gross.
Yep. The great
Mr. Keaton.
Yeah. I mean they respect the material enough, and I think that
they're having fun with it.
Yeah. But because it could have easily have been like a Trolls 2 or just like a crap, but I think it was well done enough, especially with the practical effects.
Yep.
I feel like they took enough care especially with the creature design and everything else, to where feels like you read the description, feels like a B movie.
Yeah, they're going for like a 50s B movie vibe to it, which comes through. And again, it's like what I was talking about earlier with discovering the creature. Like the film does a good job setting that up to where you don't see the worm or whatever right away. They have tracking shots where it's just the camera, you don't see anything, and it builds the suspense pretty well up to that point when you do see one.
And it's a great concept. Like
it is.
You can't walk on the floor is lava pretty much.
Pretty much, yeah. And the characters come up with some pretty ingenious ideas on how to avoid it.
Yep.
Which I thought was smart.
Yeah, which is another reason because they use their ingenuity instead of. I mean, you have the one scene when you guys broke into the wrong rec room, and they're just pummeling them with ammunition. And they just keep going to bigger and bigger and bigger guns. But yeah, they use their ingenuity. They think about things. They have a plan of attack. And it's this small town that's working together to defeat this.
Well, and that's another good piece of it. The town is it's not even like towns like that don't really exist. Like Perfection, population 14 people.
Yeah.
And you got a guy who runs a market.
Yeah.
Is that guy making any money?
Handyman.
Yeah.
Like
you need a little bit more people to sustain yourself. Yeah.
True.
Yeah.
But they couldn't. I mean, sense of the story, they couldn't have it somewhere that's able to be easily gotten to another town.
Right.
It had to be extremely remote for the story.
And I think it's a smart choice too, because you can't have a lot of character background. Like, how do does Kevin Bacon and Fred Ward's character know these people so well? Mm-hmm. Like, you don't have to have that backstory because it is a town of 14 people, and they know everything about everyone.
Yep.
So you don't need to have that backstory filled in with dialogue or anything.
Yeah. You don't have that unnecessary exposition dump of things, which is typically what they do in these kinds of movies. Like I watched Crawl recently, and there was just some dialogue that was just bad because you have to give these characters backstories as far as why they're doing things
to care about them.
It just to care about them as opposed to just drop the viewer in this setting, in this community, and go.
Yeah.
That's a lot of these kinds of movies just have that bad back and forth. Like, well, like you just have the characters talking to each other like they wouldn't talk to each other.
Yeah.
Like the mother-daughter in Crawl, or the father-daughter in Crawl. And it's like, oh, why did you leave? You know all this shit. You don't need a history on their divorce.
Right.
You're already aware of it because you lived through it.
Sure. Yeah, I couldn't imagine pitching this movie. They're like, it's worms underground. It's going to be like Jaws, but, on land.
Yeah.
That's probably what they were going for.
Probably.
Maybe that was the tagline. It's Jaws on land. Oh, here you go.
You'll never want to go on the ground again.
Yeah. But the two writers on it, S.S. Wilson and Britt Maddock, they did like Short Circuit and Batteries Not Included, Heart and Soul. Like, you get that sense of, it's like an upbeat sort of sensibility with the dialogue and stuff. And Ron Underwood, who did City Slickers and Heart and Soul.
Yeah.
So you get that interspersed in between this horror movie is just that lighthearted sort of sensibility that I think works pretty good.
No, it does. And especially having those people with enough experience developing characters that you care about.
Yeah.
Like Batteries Not Included. I mean, same kind of thing to where it takes place in an apartment building. And that one is a little bit to where they don't necessarily know each other as much, but they're able to create that kind of care for the characters in kind of a similar function because it's about the same size kind of movie. But
and the relationship between Kevin Bacon and Fred Ward's great. They you can definitely tell they're buds. God, I wish I had some clips on it. There's some good banter between the two. And what about the kid, like the asshole kid in the movie? Like I'm like, where are the parents at? It's like he's got his own house, and I'm like, what is he's got his own house? What's this guy do? Just bounces the basketball all day and gives Kevin Bacon shit. That's my job.
Yeah, that's my number 4. Your number 3.
Yeah, cult classic, Tremors.
Yeah. Well, I guess then I'll go for my number 3.
Okay, yeah.
So my number 3 is The Sandlot.
Ooh, explain.
Yeah, so literally, it's a bunch of kids versus the Beast. But I think this movie didn't pop into my head immediately when I was trying to think of this list. And I think I was on one of my Wednesday afternoon calls with Puff, just talking about movies or something, and I forget what made me think of it. But I realized, I was like, because I think I was explaining to him, I was like, I'm not a fan of these movies, but when I do like these movies, I like it because of the human ingenuity of trying to overcome whatever obstacle they're faced with.
Right.
And maybe it was something along that line to where I was reminded of The Sandlot. And to where it's obviously, people mainly think of it as a baseball movie, kids grown up, almost coming of age kind of movie, or just a good summertime flick or whatever, just comedy kind of a thing. But the elements that I enjoy about Man versus Beast are also in this film, because you have the kid hits the ball over the fence and they need to get it back. And then there's this whole lore of this 20-year-old dog that's the Beast, and he's in the backyard and you can't just go in there and get it. To where so that you have everything based on fear. The story's told from an older narrator to where he's given the perspective of, when he's telling the story, it's the same perspective of when he was a kid. So you have this larger-than-life dog, beast thing that's killed people, just the local legend of bullshit.
Yeah.
And to where it kind of inhibits how they're able to get the ball based upon that fear.
Yeah.
Which I think works.
Yeah.
But you also have the escalation of their attempts. So first they try and get it with a stick.
Yeah.
Then more or less a stick with a piece of or
a cup.
Yeah. Or a frying pan or
whatever it was.
And then they go into vacuums and sucking it up, and then the bungee with dipping him down to try and grab it, and then the erector set. Everything.
Yeah. I like where your head's at.
Yeah.
Because Sandlot is, to me, like the quintessential coming-of-age story, like a new kid coming in town that doesn't fit in right. But yeah, you're right. Sprinkled in there is the whole story with the Beast.
Mm-hmm.
It pretty much takes over the second half of the movie.
Yeah, and I think it works in a similar way to, because typically you have to have that element of fear in these types of movies, because there has to be some kind of stakes.
Yeah.
And even though watching it as an adult, you're like, okay, this is a little, like, how are these kids believing this kind of thing? But it's believable when you're a kid. So it's the same kind of elements that they experience. But mainly fear is the biggest thing. But there's a clip I have for this, which is kind of obvious. And
oh, you got it.
Oh, you have it.
You want me to have it?
You
All
have
right.
it.
Here we go.
Forget about that stuff, kid. We ain't got much time. I'm here because you're in some kind of a pickle, right?
Yeah.
A baseball with my John Hancock on it went over a fence and you can't get it back, right?
Yeah, right.
Then just hop over there and get it.
Wait. I can't.
Can't what?
I can't go into that backyard.
Why not?
There's a beast back there.
What kind?
A giant gorilla dog thing that ate one kid already.
Is that a fact? Sit down, kid. Sit down. Let me tell you something, kid. Everybody gets one chance to do something great. Most people never take the chance, either because they're too scared or they don't recognize it when it spits on their shoes.
So, and that also touches on to where a lot of these movies, people have to overcome their fear to overcome either the beast obstacle or something.
Yeah.
They have to overcome their own sense of fear of whatever it is they're dealing with. But no, I like it for that aspect of it, because the simple solution is just
go over there and get it.
Just go over there and get it.
Yeah, just take the chance.
They would have just did that then, or knocked on the front door of Mr.
Right.
Myrtle's house.
Right.
It's like, knock on my, I would have gotten it for you.
Yeah.
And to where your sense of fear just kind of blocks every other kind of rational way of handling something, all because of based on rumor or stuff like that. But I mean, I think it's a great example. And then, of course, at the end, they get the ball back. The most unbelievable thing is probably Benny the Jet outrunning a dog.
Yeah.
But yeah, and it's just a normal sized dog.
Yep. It's a typical.
Yep.
What is it? A mastiff?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
And but yeah,
and it's great. It's just a funny movie. It's a good lighthearted. I love that movie.
Mm-hmm.
Who doesn't love The Sandlot?
But it has the human ingenuity. What I enjoy. They come up with a bunch of different ways to try and overcome the problem that they're facing.
Right.
So
it's a good pick.
Nope.
Out of left field pick, Jay.
Yeah.
I like it. All right. Where am I at? Number 2?
Yeah. You're number 2.
My number 2 is Mimic.
Okay.
Mimic is a movie about, again, directed by Guillermo del Toro, and it stars Mira Sorvino, Josh Brolin, F. Murray Abraham. Oh God, who's the guy in the cop in it who's awesome? I can't remember his name. But anyway, it's about a insect monster that they have to defeat. That's essentially the movie. So Mira Sorvino is a etymologist. I don't even know what bug people are called.
Yeah. Well,
anyway, she uses there's a disease called Strickler's disease that's ravaging New York City children. It's killing them. And it's being passed around by cockroaches.
Mm-hmm.
So the way to combat that is they genetically engineer like a locust to kill these cockroaches. So that's what she does. They release it into the sewers of New York City, kills all the cockroaches. The disease isn't be spread around anymore. Children are being saved. Happy ending. You know the rest.
Yeah.
3 years later, people are starting to die, and she gets a bug from like 2 kids that are just going through the undergrounds of New York City. They find a bug. They give it to her, and she does the DNA test on it, and she realizes it's the same little tiny bug that she released 3 years ago, but now it's grown into these massive, giant bugs. And essentially, the bug has, after they've genetically engineered it to where it one generation is like 40 generations it just keeps spawning and evolving in such a quick period of time, and it's evolved to mimic humans, hence the name Mimic. So they've been around us for a couple years now, mimicking us. We just haven't realized it. So that's the movie, and you fight that monster. It's pretty absurd, the concept of it, but again, it goes back to nostalgia for me. It came out in '97. This is the height of the Dimension films.
Mm-hmm.
After Scream was successful, they just started green-lighting all these like horror movies and gave directors a chance with big budgets. Like Mimic comes to mind for Guillermo del Toro. The Faculty with Robert Rodriguez comes to mind. Obviously, Scream 2, Phantoms. Just it's kind of the same visual style, and the music behind all those movies. Marco Beltrami, he did all the music to all these movies because I like the score of the movie. It sets the tone pretty good. But I just like this movie because of the nostalgia. I like that concept of a bug mimicking a human. I think it's a cool idea.
Mm-hmm.
Again, what I was talking about, the build up to learning what the monster you're dealing with here. I think this is probably the best example of that. Just the build up to what you're dealing with. I think that's done great. I love Guillermo del Toro's visuals. There's nothing like it. He's just great at visually directing a scene.
Mm-hmm.
That comes through. All the performers are great in it. It's not particularly gory past the point of disgust or anything. The ending's kind of anticlimactic, but that's because Harvey and Bob Weinstein came in and they wanted a happy ending. Guillermo, there's a director's cut where there isn't a happy ending, where they don't survive the end and actually the bugs take over. And there's like 3 survivors. There's a subway scene in the movie where they get out of the subway, but he wanted it to end with the subway scene and the bugs taking over New York City and killing everybody. They survived and they're spreading out to other parts of the country, and like they emerge from the subway cart like as the only survivors, and the movie ends, which would have been a way better ending, but it had to be a happy ending.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love it. It's great. Have you ever seen it?
I have not. I've seen bits and pieces of it. When it first came out, I think because I was probably when did this come out? 97. So I was probably 13.
Yeah,
14, and I wasn't. I'm trying to think of movies that I was into. It wasn't. I
in '97.
I was never into horror.
Yeah,
like Dimension films.
Yeah.
And it
did you like Scream when that came out? Did you watch that?
I didn't watch Scream probably until I was in college.
Oh, really?
And it was fine. Same thing with like slasher movies. Why I'm not a fan of like Man versus Beast movies. It's just the absurdity.
Yeah.
Of it. I mean, I saw Halloween H2O when it was in theaters.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, they chopped off his head. Well, I guess that's the end of that story.
That's the end of that. Well, you were wrong there.
Yeah. And so, but yeah, so I never watched it. I think I was mainly more into comedies, and I liked Blade. I guess those kinds of movies that came out in the 90s. So like action oriented, wasn't too much into horror or anything like that.
You're right.
So, probably because I was a pussy.
Probably. Giant one.
Crying in bed after seeing a couple of cockroach scenes in this.
Yeah.
But it's
just the tone in the movie and like the sounds and the setups, the suspense in it. I mean, it's really well done.
Yeah.
I like it a lot. It doesn't age badly at all, that piece of it. He's just so good at visuals. I just love looking at it. There could have been no dialogue in this movie, and I still would have enjoyed it just because it looks great. Even like the CGI scenes that haven't aged all that well, even those are pretty good given the time. I mean, I'll give them a pass because it's 97. It's not but yeah, I mean, it's a clever idea, just well done, and I like it. I wish he could have had the final say in it instead of studios shitting on it and giving him notes and whatever. But
of course he was. I mean, this was his first
big budget one. Yeah,
big budget. Yeah.
Yep.
And because I don't know, did he do Blade 2 after this?
He did.
Yeah. So.
Yep. Well, he did The Devil's Backbone after that. He actually fought. They wanted Blade 2 to come out before The Devil's Backbone because they thought that if The Devil's Backbone was bad, that it would give Blade 2 like a bad reputation. Yep. Obviously, that didn't happen. He got his way, and Blade 2 is awesome.
Yeah.
I enjoy that more than the first one.
So, and I think even Blade 2 is still like people were aware of Guillermo del Toro, but he's not like the name that he is now.
No, definitely not.
I feel like his star definitely rose during the 2000s.
Sure.
And with that, so
yeah, that's my number 2.
Awesome.
I love it.
Well, my number 2 was Lake Placid. We already talked about that.
We did.
And well, let's talk about our number 1, which is.
I think it goes without saying, right?
Yeah, it's fucking obvious. So
it's obvious.
We won't even say the title. So
yeah.
No, Jaws, obviously.
It's obviously Jaws.
So I think this is the number 1 for a lot of people on like these kinds of movies.
For sure. Good segue in here. So I was reading an article about what Quentin Tarantino thought was the best movie made. And he had a really interesting answer. He's like, well, the best film his best film is The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. That's the best film in his eyes. But he said the best film ever made is Jaws. From like what they had versus the final outcome. He's like that is the best film ever made.
Yeah.
From a technical perspective.
Taking all the pieces, especially the pieces that didn't work.
Right.
Because originally the shark was supposed to be seen a lot sooner in the story. And the fact that it wasn't working well, that they were shooting half of it on water. They had to, I mean, they were in boats, and they had to like play with the tides and the currents and stuff like that for to try and get into the vicinity, so that way they could shoot what they wanted to shoot. They had a lot of issues with that, and I think this was before they had water tanks.
Yeah.
So
they had to shoot in the ocean.
Yeah,
right?
shoot in the ocean. They had to deal with currents. They had to deal with waves. All the elements. Is just very, very difficult for Steven Spielberg to be able to. He shouldn't have been able to make as good of a movie
as he did,
because not only is it, I mean, it's probably, I mean, it's one of the best movies ever made.
Yeah, that's inarguable.
Yeah, it's what, over 40 years old, and it's
still great.
It still holds up.
Oh yeah, it's awesome.
So it doesn't feel dated.
No.
At all. But it falls in line. The reason why this is my number one, it falls in line again with the theme of relying on human ingenuity and problem-solving skills to overcome this obstacle. And it does it so well, but you also have a bunch of other stories and sub-layers to that movie that all fit very, very well. So you have Chief Brody. I mean, it works also as a fish out of water kind of a thing, to where Chief Brody's an outsider, and he's trying to wrap his hands around this situation. But he's not only an outsider to where he doesn't like water. He's an outsider because he's not from Amity Island. He is from the city. So he's dealing with so many things he's never had to deal with before, and trying to deal with the politics of it, the actual sheer magnitude, or being able to like the physicality of it, to where, okay, we have to kill this shark, to where he has no experience with that. He's constantly relying or fighting locals to be able to overcome this.
Right. Which
I think is a very interesting aspect to have in a movie, to where some of these things you get a character, or the main character's kind of the professional, like, oh, he's just leading everybody, to where he's just trying his best to either keep up or trying to minimize the amount of damage without having so much collateral damage, as far as like shutting down the beaches and then losing the financial aspect of that.
Right. It works on two levels too, because he's the fish out of water, and also, even if it was a local sheriff, how would he deal with a shark? He would, it's not a normal circumstance that you're going to find yourself in. Yeah. So it makes the arc of his character, it amplifies it, because he is not from that area too.
So I have several clips for this that I want to. We'll do the first one.
Right.
This one, because I referenced, I think, earlier in an episode when we talked about Jaws. This is one of my favorite, favorite lines. It's just like a one-off line or whatever, but it's the dialogue, and I feel like it illustrates the realism of some of these characters.
It's boats. Martin hates water. Martin sits in his car when we go on the ferry to the mainland. I guess it's a childhood thing. There's a clinical name for it, isn't there?
Drowning.
Listen.
I don't know why that's one of my favorite ones, but it's just I love that scene. But I mean, that I just put that in
I
there,
think he's conveying that it's not irrational. You're trying to have some sort of psychological depth of my personality. It's like, no, I'm afraid of drowning. It's like typical. A lot of people are afraid of drowning. I am not special by any means because I'm afraid.
It's not
of
a childhood trauma thing. It's
right.
not. It's like, no, I don't like to drown.
Right. Oh,
it's like being afraid of heights. Like, oh, why is it a childhood? No, falling.
It's gravity.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you seen what happens to people when they fall? Like off a ladder, let alone a building. Yeah.
But as far as, and I want to dive a little bit deeper into his situation. So, one of my favorite scenes let's go ahead and play the clip of the ferry scene, and I'll explain why it's.
Martin? Martin, you gonna shut down the beaches on your own authority?
Well, what other authority do I need?
Technically, you need a civic ordinance or a resolution by a board of selectmen.
That's just going by the book. We're really a little anxious that you're rushing into something serious here. It's your first summer, you know.
What does that mean?
I'm only trying to say that Amity is a summer town. We need summer dollars. If people can't swim here, they'll be glad to swim at the beaches of Cape Cod, the Hamptons, Long Island.
That doesn't mean we have to serve them up a smorgasbord.
We never had that kind of trouble in these waters.
Well, what else could have done that to that girl?
Boat propeller?
Well, I think possibly, yes, a boating
That's
accident.
not what you told me over the phone.
I was wrong. We'll have to amend our reports.
And you'll stand by
I'll
that?
stand by you.
Martin, a summer girl goes swimming. Swims out a little far. She tires. Fishing boat comes along.
It's happened before.
I don't think you appreciate the gut reaction people have to these things.
Harry, I appreciate it. I'm just reacting to what I was told.
Martin, it's all psychological. You yell barracuda. Everybody says, huh? What? You yell shark. We've got a panic on our hands on the 4th of July.
Nice. You know what I like about that scene?
All shot in one take.
Right, that, because what if one of the actors fucks up their lines? Like, all right, get the ferry
get
back.
the ferry back. Gotta drive because they drive the car on the ferry.
Yeah,
they have all the timing and but yeah, that scene illustrates perfectly the magnitude of the situation.
Yeah,
and I think him just having it all in one take was great because. I mean, it shows the politics that he's trying to deal with, where typically in these movies you have the sheriff that's just the head. He could do whatever he wants. They're like, oh, I have the authority to do this. They very not a lot of movies put in the political angle to where or the financial aspect of these decisions that get made, and they're valid concerns too, because I mean that island is part of a tourist economy, to where shutting down the beaches would drastically affect, and they even make a line to it later in the movie that they would be on welfare throughout the winter.
Right, yeah.
And so it's not as simple as, oh, we got one kill. Let's shut down for everybody's safety. Everyone's like, well, let's pump the brakes a little bit. And seeing him struggle with the fact that he not only has to convince the mayor or he has to kind of play by the rules, but like the doctor that initially said, it was a shark attack. And now the doctor's saying, nope, I made a mistake. It's a boat propeller, because he was convinced by the mayor to not shut down.
I'll stand by my word.
Yeah. And it's not, I mean, just him having to mess with that conspiracy to where he knows what the right thing to do is, but he's unable to just because they're thinking dollar signs.
Well, any normal person that doesn't understand politics like that, like how are you going to explain to the audience that you're going to go back into the water after a shark attack? Anybody would say, yeah, we're just going to close down the beaches. All right, but then you have no movie.
Yeah.
There's no stakes. Yeah. It's really smart.
And then, so he's kind of playing second fiddle to the town council. And he kind of plays second fiddle throughout, I mean, the whole movie at one point or another. And I think that because obviously as the audience, you're supposed to be rooting for the sheriff. You're seeing it through his eyes as an outsider as well. And I think that's kind of what helps this movie also, is because there is that character that you're able to share the same point of view with, to where this is maddening. Why aren't we doing this, and this? And you can share in that character's frustration, which I think is monumental to this movie and why it stands the test of time, because you can share that journey with that character.
Right. And there's definitely mirroring. Brody's such a good character too, with, he's in between the town and the shark. What's the right thing to do? And then when he goes on the hunt with Quint and Hopper, he's in the middle as well. Where Quint is like the shark in the situation, and Hopper is like the town. Like, we're going to do it this way. Quint's like, no, we're doing it my way. Yeah. And Brody's smack dab in the middle again. He's like, I don't know what to do. Yeah. What do you want me to do?
Yeah. And go ahead and play the next clip, because I mean that kind of goes on what you're saying.
Is this the?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I gotcha.
Yep.
Here we go.
Let Hooper take a turn.
Hooper drives the boat, Chief.
So, I like that clip because just going off what you said, he's still in the middle.
Yeah.
He's not even in charge, even though it's his charter. He's still listening to Quint, the captain, and he is now playing second fiddle to Hooper.
Hooper, yeah.
And but their roles are defined.
Yeah.
It's still defined to where he's still low man. Hooper has his own, you don't see it, but he's playing solitaire.
Yeah.
On the boat, and Hooper's playing solitaire on the boat, and he's like, "Oh, why can't Hooper take a turn?" He's like, "Nope, he drives the boat." He's like, "This is your role," and which I think works because he has the least amount of expertise on that trip.
Yep.
And throughout the movie, you have Quint and Hooper kind of going back and forth, but there is some kind of mutual respect as far as they know how to handle themselves on the water.
Yeah.
Where Brody absolutely doesn't.
Right.
But he's always continuously playing second fiddle.
Yeah.
What's
that scene where Quint wants him to tie knots?
Yeah.
He's tying the knots. He's like, I haven't had to do this since the Boy Scouts, and he does it in an instant. And throws at him. And
Throws it at him. Doesn't even look at it.
Right. And Quint's like, fuck. Show me your hands.
Yeah. They're soft.
Yeah.
From counting money all your life.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like that interaction too because Quint's testing him, and then
just
Hooper's just keeping up with him.
Yeah.
And
he's getting frustrated. Yeah. Yeah. Maybe this guy does know what he's talking about a little bit. Mm-hmm. Trying to prove him wrong. Yeah.
But I like, as far as going into the monster hunt portion of it.
Yeah.
I like the attaching the barrels, which is a great way, because I'm sure the shark
wasn't working that day.
Wasn't working that day. Shit. How do we find out where the shark's at?
Yeah.
Have a yellow barrel.
Boom.
Moving around.
Yeah.
And which I think worked fantastically. Jordan Peele did the same thing in Nope.
Yep.
With the inflatable wiggly air guys. To where is it? You see it turn on. Is it?
Yeah. It was ingenious too with when they kept saying not 2 barrels, not 3 not with 3, and they kept going down.
Yeah.
They kept going down. You get that sense of, geez, they're dealing with something that's otherworldly,
incredibly strong.
Yeah.
And of course you have the boat scene when they're comparing all their
scars
and everything.
One of my favorite scenes ever.
And then you see Brody just kind of lift up his shirt, looking at his appendix scar.
Yeah.
And that's the worst he's really come across.
Yeah. No, and that scene seems so natural. I don't even know, was that even in the script? Do you think, when Quint starts monologuing about the Indianapolis?
The Indianapolis, I feel like it was because
it was scripted.
I think it was in the book.
Okay.
I think, but I've read the book 5 years ago.
Well, I tell you what, Robert Shaw is just it felt like a scene where somebody they're just talking, and then a camera comes in to film a war veteran talk about a story.
Yeah,
it's so
where
good.
He just has that 1,000-yard stare. And he's just regurgitating everything that he's remembering.
Yeah, he really inhabits that character. He's awesome.
Yeah.
Love it.
Like those black eyes, like a doll's eyes.
That's my favorite part of the movie. There's no shark in it. It's just him talking at the table. Yeah. Yeah, you get surprises of that in the movie. That's another reason why I like it. It's just those things come out of nowhere, and you don't.
Yeah, it's not just one note.
It's not just a one note monster movie. It's about the characters that we talked about. That's why I like Tremors or Lake Placid. It's the interaction with the characters.
Because it's about. It's a couple hour long movie.
Yeah.
I feel like if it was made now, it would just be
CGI shark and
CGI shark, but it would also be like an hour and a half.
Yeah.
And it would mainly, I feel like, concentrate on the hunt for the shark as opposed to all the politics of it. And I think, you have two different movies with you have the monster movie in the beginning, you have the adventure movie at the end. But having all those different layers to this movie, I think, is really what drives it home. But,
funny story. I watched it about on the 4th of July, actually, which is what your ritual, right?
Yeah.
And my son, who's 7, watched the first 10 minutes with me, the opening scene with the swimmer and stuff. Scared the shit out of him.
Yeah.
Yeah. You don't even see a shark. Just her performance. He was just, he's like, Daddy, what's this movie about? It's like, there's a shark in there. It's like, really? And then like the next month we were going on a trip to the ocean. I was afraid he was gonna be scared to get in there, and he was fine though. But yeah,
It's amazing. It's not amazing, but I mean, it's funny how young children can infer. I mean, they're just so intuitive to where a scene like that, to where they immediately know something is wrong, but they don't know, but
What's
they're
going on?
scared.
Yeah.
And how that still translates to adults through the art of filmmaking.
Oh, yeah.
To where you don't know what you can kind of infer what's getting her, but you're not totally sure because it's the fear of the unknown.
Right. Absolutely.
To where how well that works, not only for adults, but also small children as well.
How did they do that? I know you've seen a bunch of making ofs. How did they get her to go back and forth like that?
She was a stunt woman, and what they had done is they attached a harness to her, and I think it was an like a
people
crane,
pulling her?
Yeah, just pulling her back and forth, and I think it was like a ripcord underneath, and I can't remember if she was actually injured, like
she got hurt,
back injury or something. But I mean, it was just whipping her back and forth, and
this is the 70s.
Yeah, that's all they. She was in a harness, and they just dragged.
That's how they treated women in the 70s, right?
Hey, back when women were women and men were animals. So, but yeah, I mean, it's just a testament. Just the fact the shark wasn't working. They were filming on water. Like they had everything going against it, and the fact that they were able to pull off one of the best movies ever made is amazing.
If they weren't able to pull it off, we wouldn't have Steven Spielberg.
Yeah, true. Yeah, it was the first blockbuster. Let's play the last clip that I have.
Let's do it.
Hey, what day is this? It's Wednesday. It's Tuesday, I think. I think the tide's with us. Keep kicking. I used to hate the water. I can't imagine why.
So,
Jay.
Yeah, it's obviously that's the very last line of the film.
Yeah.
But I like that because I mean, with all that stuff, they could have easily done something to where they just go back, but they added just that little line to where it brings Brody's arc to full, like, just
closes
completion.
it.
Just closes it out, and to where he used to hate the water. Obviously now he does, but I mean during the last portion, "Smile, you son of a bitch," he shoots the air tank. He's playing second fiddle the entire time, completely out of his element, but he's the one to actually take down the shark.
Yep.
I think was a nice touch too. But
it could have ended there.
Yeah.
It could have ended with, Jaws sinking to the bottom of the ocean.
Have like a RoboCop ending.
Right.
And just sinking
end
to the bottom
credits.
of,
Yeah.
boom, and
yeah, it was a nice touch.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think it's tragic the way that Quint died after telling that story of his friends getting eaten by sharks, and he ends up getting eaten by a shark?
It's a very literary ending.
Yeah.
For that character, because it's like he was supposed to die that day, but he didn't.
Right.
Yeah. Like almost like a Final Destination kind of vibe. But,
yep.
But yeah, tragic ending for that character, which I think, that just goes with the writing. I mean, it's a very well written movie, and I think a lot of it has to do with the book being there for source material.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like if this was just written like a screenplay was written out of the blue for a movie, I think it wouldn't have been as good. I think part of the reason why this movie did so well, especially from the writing aspect, is all the backgrounds of those characters were already there.
Yeah, written in a book.
And even if it didn't elaborate on some of the instances, like in the book, Hooper and Brody's wife have an affair.
Oh yeah, you were telling me about that.
Yep. And they left that out. But during that dinner scene, they were still kind of like somewhat not really flirting, but you could tell she was really fascinated by his character. So maybe they had filmed some shots, so they decided to cut it out.
Yep.
But there was so much background and so much subtext available not only for the actors but also for the script, the way they constructed the scenes that I think worked really well because you had that whole universe already created in another medium.
Yeah, and I think it added. I'm glad they cut that piece out, like Brody's wife having an affair, because it just would have added something more, another stressor that didn't need to be there.
Yeah.
Because I like the other touches in this movie where he's stressed out over the politics of everything. Actually, people dying. It's the weight is on him. Like I couldn't imagine being in that situation, and you're just you want to jump off a bridge and kill yourself. And then they have this scene where he's just at the table and his son is mimicking him, and then he's like, give me a kiss, I need one, or whatever.
Yeah.
And it gives you that sense of, okay, this is how he's able to kind of overcome that a little bit. He has these little moments to where it brings him back, like, okay, I have
he's got his family.
Right. I'm not so under stress right now that I'm just going to break down and just walk away.
Yeah, and it would have been, I think, added too much.
Yeah.
It would have just been unnecessary.
Right.
It would have felt unnecessary.
Yeah.
In the book, it goes a lot more in detail as far as why she has an affair with him, and it's because she no longer has that Ivy League life anymore. But he came from Ivy League, so it's kind of like she feels like not as pretty. I mean, it's a very one-dimensional kind of character,
Right.
but there's reasons why she did it. But without exploring that, it would have felt like just out of place.
Right.
And obviously, Jaws in the book is a metaphor as far as what people are dealing with. Like in the book, Hooper dies. Probably because he banged Brody's wife, so that was his punishment. So he survives in the movie, which I think is good, because I think in the book he either gets eaten out of the shark cage or the shark cage goes and he drowns. But
that's the only part of the movie where I'm like, really? They're gonna descend a shark cage on this boat that's barely hanging on? Well, I guess at that point they didn't have a choice.
Yeah.
He even says, "You got a better idea? What do you want to do?"
No.
Yeah.
But yeah, the little human elements of it, to where when you go scuba diving or you go underwater, you spit on your goggles to prevent it from fogging up.
Yeah.
And they don't explain that aspect of it. It's probably common knowledge back then. But when he's like, "I don't have spit."
Right.
But you can just tell he's scared shitless. He's like, I don't have spit. And he doesn't have a long aside like, I'm scared. I don't know if I can go in that cage.
Yeah.
They don't have that horrible, one line.
Why do you think Quint kind of went berserk and just destroyed all the radio equipment? I've always wondered why he did that. Was he just irritated with the distractions of everything? We need to focus on this problem at hand?
Maybe. I feel like it was more of his own personal vendetta. And I could see part of it being the distractions. I think that's a good point. But yeah, he does kind of lose it to where I feel like it's more personal and more emotional for him.
Right.
Because the logical thing would be go back and then try again.
Right.
I mean, but it could be the distractions. It could be we might not find this guy again. We might not. We might not be able to find the shark again. Like, this is our chance if we're gonna do something.
Right. And going back to when men were men, I like how when he destroys the equipment and Brody's like, that's just great, and then Quint's like, ah. Normally, like a fight would break out. Like Brody would straight up punch Quint in the face, and there'd be an all-out brawl.
Yeah.
But it doesn't happen. It's just guys settling their differences. Insulting each other like, shut up, and nothing happens. I figured today that would not happen. That would not be the way it went down.
Yeah. There's also a little bit of when the boat catches fire, or like the lantern falls or something. And, And Quentin's in the middle of something. He's like, Brody. He's like, put out the fire.
Yeah. Oh, shit.
Like, of all this other shit that's happening all around. Brody, can you take care of that, please?
That's the least of my problems right now, yeah. But yeah, Jaws. What a great movie. It kind of makes this episode anticlimactic for a top 5 because I think we both knew.
I think everyone knows that this is the number one.
Yeah, but you know what? When I was thinking about this and like, oh, Beast is coming out, let's do a top 5 Beast movie. I didn't realize the Beast was gonna punch lions in the face, and Jay would have no interest in watching it.
Can't do it.
Because originally I was like, let's go watch Beast and compare it, kind of like what we did with Nope. But what are you gonna do?
Yeah. But that's all right.
Yeah. If you haven't seen Jaws, see Jaws.
Yeah, if you haven't seen Jaws, sorry we ruined it for you, but
yeah, no kidding.
I'm pretty sure if you're listening to this, you've seen Jaws. So.
Yes.
But if not, watch it. Even if you know how it ends, it's fantastic. It's probably one of the.
It might be one of my top 10 movies. My top 10 favorite movies might be.
Yeah, I can't even remember the top 5 we did.
I don't either.
I remember my number 1, but
I remember Roadhouse was on mine. Roadhouse doesn't hold a candle to Jaws.
Yeah. As far as filmmaking craft, this is probably one of the best that's ever been made.
Yeah, it'd be hard to argue with Quentin Tarantino on why this is the best film ever made.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So. All right. Well, anything else on Jaws?
No, I think we're good.
All right. Well, hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Join us next time. Which will be hopefully next week.
Yep.
It'll be posted a little bit, maybe Tuesday or Wednesday next week. But we will be discussing the first 3 episodes of House of the Dragon.
House of the Dragon.
House of the Dragon, the new Game of Thrones show. You've seen the first episode. I have yet to see it, but by the time we release the next episode, 3 episodes would have passed. So we'll discuss that. Hope you enjoyed the show. Comment on our episodes at acastwithnoname.com or shoot us an email, contact.acastwithnoname.com if you would like to suggest a topic for a discussion, a movie for us to review, anything. Let us know. But yeah.
Yeah, we're going to have more clips. It's going to be smoother.
More clips, hopefully. Yeah, just keep working. If there's an aspect you want to see in the show or anything, let us know. We're still trying to find...
Yep. Are we watching Samaritan? Is that what we're also doing?
Yeah, but that will be the episode after House of 3 Dragons. So yeah.
House of 3 Dragons?
House of 3 episodes of House of Dragon. God damn it. The dragon dragons, double dragon.
There were 3 dragons in Game of Thrones. Maybe that's where your head was at.
Maybe. I doubt it. It was
probably
just
not.
me having a stroke. So it's all right. But yeah. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.